Shout out to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, Spirit of the Law here. In this unique unit deep dive, we're going to look at the Age of Empires version of StarCraft Zerglings with the Karambit Warrior. This unit is very unique for costing only half a population space, meaning you can have 100 villager economy plus 200 of these ankle biters at the same time. Is quantity a quality of its own? And how does this unit hold up against melee trash swordsmen, which only cost food in the late game? Just like a Karambit, we'll keep it short and to the point. Let's check them out. To start with, they cost 25 food and 15 gold, with a lightning fast 6-second creation time, dropping to 4.5 seconds after conscription. Contrast that with 21 seconds for the swordsman line, and a still slightly longer, roughly 5 seconds for a post-Imperial Huskarl from the barracks, which all makes the castle requirement for Karambits feel like less of a bottleneck than it typically would be. In fact, between their cost, training time, and half pop space, it doesn't really feel like there's much of any bottleneck to producing them once you have your first castle up. Stats-wise, they don't look great at first though, and while they're much cheaper individually, they have just half the HP of a longsword, 2 less attack, and 0 melee armor. In fact, men-at-arms are a closer comparison in Castle Age, while still beating Karambit significantly in the HP department. However you slice it, you're going to burn through a lot of Karambit Warriors, and as we'll see, an important point is the unit can actually perform fairly well, but requires having 2 to 3 times your opponent's numbers, and basically you never want to fight anything besides maybe villagers with equal numbers. In terms of more hidden things, they have 2 bonus damage against shock infantry, which includes eagles and a couple of other recent additions, make them actually quite good against these 3 units. Their other secret weapon is their speed, at 1.2 tiles per second, making them not just 20% faster than pikemen, but even eagle warriors in Castle Age, who have a base movement speed of just 1.15. For upgrades, it's a pretty straightforward unit, with just arson, squires, the blacksmith attack upgrades, and an elite upgrade. Remember, melee get the armor upgrades for free from a civ bonus, again really streamlining a transition into the unit once you have a castle up. So that's the unit on paper, but now let's talk about how this all comes together, as having a super cheap, faster version of men-at-arms in Castle Age is hard to compare to standard units. A really important point and takeaway from this video, if you're looking for a practical tip, is even more so than usual, you have to avoid trickling Karambits into a fight. For an illustrative example, if you have 2 Karambit warriors squaring off against a long swordsman with the same upgrades, the long swordsman wins if he fights them one at a time. If the Karambits attack together though, they reverse that outcome. It's why that half pop plus low cost and fast training time are all key to have in combination, as you can genuinely double your opponent's army size if you make a point of doing that, and their fast movement also lets you avoid fights until you have that overwhelming numbers advantage you need. Now, some of this may be reminding you of Lanchester's square law, which is the idea that units in a large group, say a 2-to-1 numbers advantage, have more like a 4 times strength multiplier. That is absolutely at work with Karambits, where balancing resources and sending the Karambits in with 2 waves against longswords, they again predictably lose. And in fact, from this result, we can almost exactly reverse engineer the linear law. While having the Karambits attack all at once, the resulting HP left over almost perfectly gives us the square law in action. The takeaway is simply you never want to fight using equal numbers with Karambits. You really need to swarm and have at least double your opponent's numbers from the start. Another small quirk to keep in mind with the unit is they have very low attack, just 7 compared to the longsword's 9 or knight's 10. What this means is against low melee armor targets, where individual Karambits are relatively light hitters as you'd expect, they can actually give a lot of value, whereas against high melee armor units, especially 6 or higher, the longsword or any typical infantry will start to perform much better than Karambits, which are just a little extra sensitive to the few units with very high melee armor. This all leaves us with a unit that's easy to mass and good against things with low melee armor, and in situations where their speed can be an asset, which gives them a few nice use cases. One is against pikemen, as one of the few matchups they can win with just equal numbers, and if you balance total resources, Karambits then win big, assuming you wait for the opportunity to have that numbers edge and don't mind spending gold. Considering the melee's battle elephant focus, this comes up as a more common matchup than you might expect. Elite skirmishers are another good matchup, as Karambits have free armor upgrades and can tank a reasonable number of javelins. Even with the skirmishers being microed, Karambits are almost 40% faster, and again quite a bit cheaper individually, so skirmishers can quickly find they've Karambit off more than they can chew. Another great use case is against eagles, where Karambits lose one-on-one, but with balanced resources and with around 2/3 of their HP left, helped a great deal by their hidden +2 attack bonus. The fact they're also faster than Castle Age eagles means unlike longswords, they can actually force this fight to happen. The same logic applies to GN swordsmen and fire lancers, who also take that bonus damage and are quickly run down by Karambits. Another easily overlooked role is to defend castles against rams. This is always a subtle advantage for civs with infantry unique units at the castle, but Karambits with their extra fast creation time become among the best at doing this. So those are some of their best roles, but now let's talk about the more debatable ones. One example is knights, where cost-wise you can theoretically have more than triple the knights' numbers, and Karambits make that fight close enough that it can really go either way. That said, they're not really a knight counter in the long run, simply because on 3 stables you can mass the knights needed here much faster than the Karambits, and ultimately I would just say neither one clearly hard counters the other. Likewise, despite being infantry with just 1 base pierce armor, I don't consider crossbows to be a hard counter. Against longswords, for example, with balanced resources and micro, the average player could turn that into a crossbow victory with enough space to work with. Against Karambit Warriors, that's much harder to do, depending on what kind of numbers we're talking about. It just comes down to speed and how effectively Karambits can surround and chip away at crossbows. Again, I wouldn't say one unit here hard counters the other, but is a case where you can expect a bit more out of Karambits than your average infantry. Their weaknesses are then pretty intuitive. The cavalry archer has the mobility to deal with them, and scorpions or other anti-infantry specialists can also be pretty effective. Anything that exploits their low HP to pick them off before they can close the distance is really the obvious weakness. All of this gives you a unit that works well playing off the melee's bonuses, elephant focus, and is a reasonably versatile unit when used in mass. They're probably most common to see on Arena, where the melee's fast uptimes followed by a quick castle drop can lead into a lot of units very quickly, which then exploit the fact that their soft counters like mass crossbows or cavalry archers need time to build up their numbers and can just be overwhelmed. Now though, let's see if Karambit coins can hold their value as we look forward to the Imperial Age. A few things happen here for melee, including a faster Imperial Age advance time, and the automatic armor comes in, which even before an elite upgrade are already giving you a power spike. As for the elite upgrade, it's 900 food and 600 gold, adding 10 HP for a 33% increase, +1 attack, +1 melee armor, and a hidden +1 against buildings that isn't blocked by masonry. On the one hand, percentage-wise, it's a significant upgrade for a few stats, but on the other hand, it costs the equivalent of roughly 40 units. While you theoretically can make a lot of Karambits after the elite upgrade, it's not necessarily a no-brainer, especially when we've seen how important it is for Karambits to keep their numbers up. One important factor to weigh this against is Imperial Age opens a new intriguing option in their two-handed swordsmen. After unique tech, these swap their 20 gold cost for food, giving melee arguably the most versatile trash unit in the game. Karambits still have the edge in terms of speed, and will beat two-handed swordsmen with balanced resources, when gold and food equally, but there are 2 considerations here. First, Karambits do cost gold, so in situations that's harder to get, it's an argument in favor of swapping Karambits for swordsmen, which fill a similar anti-trash role. The other consideration is you don't want to pay for both the Elite Karambit Warrior upgrade and Force Levy if you can help it, as that's just a lot of upgrade costs. And ultimately, depending on how you weigh the gold cost versus speed advantage, you ideally pick one unit or the other. In terms of what you then get from an Elite Karambit Warrior, keep in mind they're individually worse than Spanish Supremacy villagers. So again, it's not about quality, it's about quantity and swarming. If you're keeping their numbers up, they perform a similar role to Castle Age, dealing with halberdiers, elite skirmishers, and even hussars, filling a quintessential anti-trash role. They're of course still good against eagles as well, or any other time they can use that anti-shock infantry bonus. That might actually be their most popular use case in Imperial Age in fact, as a counter to late game eagle raids. On the other hand, a role they can play themselves is then raiding, as remember melee lack all but the first cavalry armor upgrade, so their light cavalry is a bit anemic at doing that, and even without the elite upgrade, Karambits can still be pretty annoying to deal with. Again, similar to Castle Age, they can then maybe outmuscle the weaker knight civs, beating generic cavaliers with balanced resources, and can even put up a roughly balanced fight with paladins, if you're actually getting that 3.5 to 1 numbers advantage that their cost implies. With a proper mass, you'll find they can actually trade reasonably well against a lot of melee units, and as just one other example, can beat elite berserks with balanced resources. On the other hand, the more arbalesters, hand cannons, cavalry archers, and scorpions around, the more they're going to be exposed, as fundamentally just a low HP infantry. Of course, we have to consider their context within melee as an arbalester and battle elephant civilization. In theory, they give a bit of a headache to skirmishers or onagers and can be paired with melee arbalesters, but I think the much more natural pairing is with battle elephants, as Karambits give you a decent answer to spears and to a lesser extent monks or onagers, while being better at raiding. Admittedly, it sounds weird to say an infantry unit adds mobility in support of a cavalry unit, but that's kind of how it works out in this case. In Imperial Age, they work as a standalone unit to defend castles and to counter eagles or trash, with the speed element being the main selling feature over just going for the melee swordsman line. In that vein, ultimately the main weakness to work around is they do cost gold, and once you throw in the elite upgrade, any elephants, arbalesters, or bombard cannons you want to make, it all starts to add up. Prior to running out of gold though, they're undeniably a frustrating unit for opponents, as they swarm what should be their counters. They're actually not dissimilar to ants, being perhaps weak individually, but utilizing numbers can take down dangerous prey. In fact, if you love watching Karambits scurry around the map and want a real-life version of that, be sure to check out my ant farm kits, available online through my new company, Spirit of the Larva. Order a farm today through a website I made with this video's sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just starting or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it easy to create a great-looking website, engage with your audience, and then sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place. Using either their pre-made templates or Squarespace's AI-enhanced website builder, you can create a fully customized website to suit your needs. It's perfect for building an online presence for a physical business or starting an online store, using their built-in tools for inventory and shipping, with plenty of analytics to give you insight about your website's traffic and sales. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/spiritofthelaw to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. So that was a look at the Karambit Warrior. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.